わからん。
Preparation time expired. Now we'd like to start the test debate for the Kansai 2014. The motion for this round is, this House believes that the world should aim to create a single unified cosmopolitan language and abolish all other languages. First of all, I'd like to call upon Prime Minister to show your first constructive speech within 7 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, the language is the basis of our interaction. We believe that as long as tons of people on the earth speak tons of different languages, world will not be better off. That's why we are very proud to propose. What is our model? Firstly, we'd like to gather the linguists and hold a congress to discuss what is the new cosmopolitan language. Firstly, they will discuss extract each language core parts of the grammar and combine this grammar and simplify them and make the new framework of the grammar. And they said, secondly, they'd like to research the particular nuance of each language as much as possible, and they'd like to translate each particular nuance of language into the new cosmopolitan words, and as much as they can. And secondly, we believe how to abolish the other language and how to replace these kind of cosmopolitan language. We say that as a first generation, the whole country try to establish that the second language, second official language, they'd like to, no thank you very much, sir, they'd like to use this kind of cosmopolitan language. And as a second generation of this taking proposal, they try to replace into the first language of this society, but we still allow to using this kind of original language. No, thank you very much, sir. We think the education or the business will be done by the cosmopolitan language in these particular cases. But thirdly, we say that in the long term, they'd like to finally abolish this kind of abolish the other all language. That is our aim of this kind of proposal. And when we don't care about pen, that we can abolish finally, but we'd like to abolish, no later please, we finally try to abolish this kind of language, and we'd like to establish the cosmopolitan language. And we don't ban the research on the classic of other own languages. For example, in the Latino, the European can enjoy the Latino poetry and so on, so forth. But we just as the first language and own language, we'd like to use the new cosmopolitan language. That is our clear model. Do you have any question?
Points. Okay. Which is your stance, to simplify languages or to have more and more nuanced languages? Which is your stance? Simply, that is contradiction.
We don't think this is contradiction, because we can simplify, simplify the grammar, but at the same time, such kind of words can be diverse, Mr. Speaker. That's why we think there is no problem at all. So let's move on to our issues. First one, I have to talk about the fairness in terms of language and why the status quo situation is problematic. And secondly, we're going to talk about the culture will grow after the disposal. So first, my partner will talk about the conflict between the people who speak different language will be mitigated after the disposal. So firstly, how the fairness is problematic and the fairness can be guaranteed. Firstly, we say we identify the status quo as a problem of the domination of the majority language, especially in the context of the English. The English dominates the international society. For example, in the case of business, most parts of business are conducted by the English, and people who cannot speak English, almost all, they cannot actively participate in the business field. Of course, some business field, particular business field, they can participate in by using the translator and so on and so forth. But especially in the case of actively, they try to conduct this kind of business conduct. We think that such kind of impossibility of using English is extremely problematic. And in the case of academic field, we also think this is a problem, especially in the context of the other country, especially people who use the minority language. The textbook of higher education is only written by the English. That's why we say the only condition that they can use, they can learn the higher academic skill. We think that studying and mastering the English is important condition. That's why I say this situation is problematic. Why this situation is problematic? First, we say there is unfairness between native and non-native for the English, because simply the native or the English speaker can have the advantage in the terms of business or academic ability. We think this situation is simply problematic because there are people who cannot speak English, but they cannot express their opinion to the international society. They cannot actively play in the international business field. We think this disadvantage is unacceptable, simply. And secondly, we say if this unfairness exists even in the context of during the non-native country, because during non-native or English country, there is a problem in terms of the gap between the English ability. Because, for example, the natural talent or the environment or the time to studying the English relate to the English ability, and only people who can speak English well, or it means that only people who could learn the English is advantage in the first place. That's why I say this kind of ability or the environment that relates to birth lottery issues, that because people cannot completely choose in the first place. In this situation, that this kind of unfairness is totally unfair. No, thank you very much, sir. Not totally unfair. That's why we think we have to minimize this kind of gap in terms of getting advantage by speaking English. That's why I say this situation. That's why we say after the disposal, we think this problem will be solved. Why this problem will be solved after the disposal? Uniquely, no, thank you. We think that because such kind of simply, all people can have the native as a native language, as a cosmopolitan language. They can utilize and they can communicate well in the international business field, in the academic field, because all textbook of the academic research is translated in or written by the new cosmopolitan language. That's why I think in this situation, such kind of gap between the people who have native about majority language and non-native about majority language will disappear. That's why simply the fairness will be guaranteed in the first place. So secondly, why the culture will rather grow in the first place? We think that such kind of culture, that there's a people minority culture exists. We consider, but there's such kind of talent of inside the minority language community will be disclosed in the society in the first place, in the status quo, Mr. Speaker. For example, even though Indian singer will sing well by the Tamil languages, there's such kind of ability or talent cannot be noticed by all over the world, because such kind of singer is sing in the context of the Tamil language. That's why I think after the disposal, we think the language or culture will be expanded, because simply that all people speak the same language, speak the same words, speak the same lyrics. We think that people can share such kind of culture and enhance each other. We say such kind of scale of the enhancement of the culture will be increased after the disposal. That's why we say, especially in the context of new generation, we think there's a huge benefit in terms of cultural development. That's why we think we are very proud to propose.
Thank you for the remarks. Next, I'd like to call upon leader of opposition to show your first negative case within 7 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, our stance is to not force to learn a certain language for the people. We are more than happy to accept the international school or the bilinguals. That is okay. What we want to do is, we want to secure the freedom of choice of the language for the people, which would be the base of the idea or the culture. We want to secure the option for such diverse languages for the people. That is what we want to do. So I'm going to talk about 2 points in my speech. Firstly, why the government do not have the right to deploy the right to choose language for the people. And secondly, the benefit coming from the saving the diversity of the language. But before that, Honorable, they talked about the inequality between native speakers about English and non-native speakers. However, their argument actually means that other language cannot express definitely the same meaning what they want to say. So they are failed to show that the necessity to abolish other. We are more than happy to naturally develop some language as English as a passive advantage of the each different cultures or the language. But we want to say that by learning each other or each other's languages, they can truly understand, and that is the status quo, and that is totally enough, and that is a healthy situation, we think. So my first point: why government do not have the right to choose language? So people are in the mother tongue, and so that is why they can feel the familiarity and they can feel relaxed with the people who are very close to the people, such as family or the members of the community. And so because of that difference, they can have the interest towards other languages or the other cultures. And so they can have the stable individuality or the identity what is in. And so if the people are interested in others, so at the end of the day, they can freely learn others. And so they have the right to choose whatever kind of the people who want to communicate with each other. And so the language, having same language with certain people can make the common difference point with the close people. And so people has on the people's own accord choosing languages, and such right has been seen as a significant right, and that kind of a right have been secured by the government. For example, under World War I, in Nebraska, in the United States, the government tried to ban learning and using German languages. That was actually threatening the unity of the communication for the immigrants, especially coming from the German society. And that was threatening the freedom for the people who want to enjoy the German cultures or the literature and so forth. And actually the Supreme Court said that such restriction is totally against the Constitution. That is one kind of the right that deserves the protection. Secondly, benefit to say diversity. Yes, sir.
Just like Singapore government tried to eliminate the dialect of Singapore English, government is a legitimate actor to change language based on the citizen's benefit.
We don't think so. In our paradigm, such neglect for such diversity or should not be allowed, and that is our stance. And secondly, the benefit to say diversity, we have three points. Firstly, people have the right to enjoy the different culture, and secondly, the different language will make the basement for the creation of the new culture, and that diversity is actually necessary to develop the culture or the ideology and so forth. And thirdly, that will become the platform of its different opinion. Let me explain one by one. Firstly, people have the right to enjoy the different culture. So, as we see that there is on the status quo, there is a very variety of the language and the variety of the culture exists. And so, if we want to, we can see that the clear difference according to the language. For example, in the case of the lyric of the songs, Japanese people, when the Japanese people don't feel that the Japanese language is totally cannot clearly express what they want to do, what they want to express, they try to mingle some kind of the English words into their Japanese songs, and so that means that the different language will express the different things. And secondly, it will make the basement for the creation of the new culture. So each language has unique and different ways of expression. For example, in the poem, so Japanese poem and English poem is totally different expression. For example, if you translate the Japanese poem waka into English, its nuance or the ideology cannot be expressed for the other people. So we have to learn or take that idea by its own languages. If we translate Basho's waka into English, we cannot they wanted to express in the other languages. So if all the languages was abolished and only one language was left, that will kill the ways of the expression, and they will kill the choice to learn what they really want to express, and thirdly, will abolish the platform. So each language has different grammar or the order of the words. It means that the order to start to think, or what would you put the emphasis on in what they want and what you are thinking is totally different according to the language. And because of the because of the such diversity of the framework of the thinking, the produced idea is also diverse. That is why we can extend our idea, and we can develop our culture. That is what we want to hold. Thank you.
Thank you for the remarks. Next, I'd like to call upon Deputy Prime Minister to show you on second affirmative case within 7 minutes.
So the barrier created between languages is one that can't easily be overcome, and it inhibits people from trying to cooperate with each other and trying to understand each other. And my great Prime Minister has already explained the inequality that is created also. But in my point, I'll explain how the barrier between people causes conflict, and how through taking this plan, it can be mitigated and it can actually be minimized. But before moving on, a few points of rebuttal. So first of all, she said that because people share a common language, this kind of enhances familiarity between people, and that they can feel relaxed. But however, we say that by taking this plan, then we can actually unite the whole world, and because they share the same language. And we say that if they share the same language, like she said, then people can feel more familiar with each other, and people can feel more relaxed. And she said that because of this difference between languages, then it can actually incite interest towards other cultures. But however, if we look at the status quo, there are many places where English is spoken, between the United Kingdom and between America and between Australia. And these kind of countries, they all speak English, but they still have an interest towards other cultures. And even if the language is the same, but it doesn't mean that the culture is the same as well. There is still variation between each country. And so we believe that people can still have different forms of expression even within that same language. And so the fact that in fields like literature, where she said that you have to try to they try to incorporate other words to kind of to show nuance or another kind of feeling towards in the lyrics, it can also be done through our plan, because there are, of course, different forms of expression between different cultures. And we believe that also, we said that we can still study old languages like Latin in Europe, right? So it's not like we're inhibiting people from using these kind of words, but we're just saying that as a language, people have to speak the same language. Okay, so yeah, and she said that we failed to explain why we have to abolish all other languages. This is because, first of all, we said that inequality is created because under the status quo, 30% of the world GDP is due to English, and so we see that that's a large amount of money, right? And we say that if it's not the mother language, if it's not the first spoken language, then this inequality will keep on continuing. It will keep on being reproduced, because some people will always not understand fully the situation, right? So we have to abolish all other languages to create this success. So moving on, the barrier between people. So misunderstanding between people due to language can inhibit and stop mutual understanding and cooperation between people from different languages. And why is this so? Because if you can't understand the other person, or if you can't try to communicate what you want to say to them, it can lead to things like friction and frustration among these kind of people. And this is a problem that must be solved. And if we look at the status quo, there are many immigrants across the world in places like Europe and America. And when these immigrants move to a new country, they must learn the new language, right? And as a second or a third language, because they already have a mother native language. And they usually go when they are an adult, so it makes it very difficult for them to learn this. So they become they're more poor at speaking English than the local people, right? Or not English, but any language, the local language. So they can't. So they usually have a strong accent, or they can't learn the grammar or sentence structure. And what does this lead to? So the local people can't understand them, and the immigrants can't communicate either, right? So this friction creates a wall between people, and it causes like immigrants to be in groups rather than try to interact with local people. And this actually enhances the conflict, because they try to be with other people from their country because it's easier to be with people they can communicate with. And of course, it's not only language that creates a barrier between these people, but language must always be the first step for mutual cooperation, because without it, you can't really understand what's going on. And so, under the status quo, we see that local people look down on immigrants because they can't speak the language, so they feel like they're not academically skilled enough as they are, and they are downgraded and looked down upon, and there's silent discrimination towards them, where people bully them, or like not enough social welfare is given, and so these kind of negative feelings are enhanced. And if we look at, for example, Europe and in France, much discrimination exists towards the immigrants, because there's a culture of miscommunication between the people, and this can't be mitigated because these people can't speak the language, so they can't really try to cooperate with each other and try to understand what the other person is feeling. And this is a huge social problem under the status quo, and we believe that can be solved through creating a cosmopolitan language. And secondly, if we look at examples of like places in the Middle East, in like Iran or Iraq, where there's a lot of war conflict going on, then the local people, they suffer from these kind of from the terrorism or the attacks, right? And we believe that when like NGOs or when international cooperation try to enter and try to help these local people and try to help innocent civilians, then there's still an miscommunication between them, and they kind of feel a barrier to actually the local people feel a barrier against these NGOs and international corporations, because they can't speak the language, and they see them kind of as an enemy, and they don't know if they can trust each other. So the conflict is enhanced furthermore, and these kind of people keep on suffering because they can't understand the language, right? So we believe that through a cosmopolitan language, then the feeling of like seeing them as an enemy, or feelings of seeing them as different, can be reduced, and it can actually we can actually encourage more mutual understanding and mitigate conflict in the long run. So that is why we are strongly happy to propose.
Thank you for the remarks. Next, I'd like to call upon Deputy Leader of Opposition to show the second negative case, whether several minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and honorable ladies and gentlemen. As a part of that, our stance is that we strongly believe that those who want to learn another kind of language, who want to be a bilingual, it is within their freedom of choice. And we strongly believe that as my speech, I'm gonna prove that why such culture, why such language deeply related with culture is very important. And even if to some extent there is some usefulness because of the universal culture, but I want to prove that such culture or language, language is more important than such usefulness and such. Usefulness because of single human cosmopolitan language. So I'm very happy to oppose this motion. First, I have one rebuttal. They said under students for such misunderstanding due to differences of language and such immigrants cannot be understood each other like something. But we think that even if after taking this plan, such misunderstanding cannot be solved. Moreover, on the contrary, it will in the short time such miscommunication will increase because if we take this plan, such single unified cosmopolitan language are compulsory to such all over the people. So it is new thing for all of them. So everyone have a hard time to understand what is this like something, and understand the grammar or understand the words, and they have to run. They have to run the new cosmopolitan language from the first point. So in the short time, when they try to run such single unified cosmopolitan language, it is difficult for them to fully communicate with each other because they cannot fluently speak such single unified cosmopolitan language at the first time. So such short time miscommunication will increase after taking this one. So their arguments does not stand. Okay.
Listen to our model. We abolish old language after we all speakers become native to cosmopolitan.
But there is some difference between, like the same case of same sex. There is a difference between who can master the language in a short time. But there is someone who cannot master the language in a short time, and it takes a lot of time for someone to understand the such cosmopolitan language, and so the time lag between mastering such cosmopolitan language will cause such short time miscommunication increasing. So the argument does not stand. Then I move on to my argument. My argument is about because as I said in the introduction, why such language is important, and even when compared to efficiency in after taking this plan, but culture or language is very important. And then let me explain. Because language is their platform, their ideas. Because we speak language all the time, always saying, and when we greet with each other, when we have conversation with others, we always use the language. And even when we read something or write something, we use such kind of language. So the time we spend with the language is very huge, and our daily life are totally based on the language things, because language things, and it is always used. So so the influence of the influence of the language to the people is very huge because of such uniqueness of the language. And such language is they have a lot of characteristics. Different languages have different characteristics because, for like the example, the first person in Japanese, watashi, ore, boku, uchi, ora, like something. But in English, there's always I. So always I, and So because like 僕はドラえもん in Japanese, but in English it is I am ドラえもん. And in サザエでございます because in English I am サザエ like something. So the such diversity of can be thrown away. Moreover, and in the Japanese name, the character's name of name can be thrown away if we taking this plan. Because like the case of Furuta-san's second name is K, and so K means enlightenment. But in other languages like English, the true meaning of K cannot be cannot be conveyed because of what his parents love or affection cannot be fully expressed in English. That just sound KIE remains in other languages. So such true meaning and such how important importance of such things cannot be conveyed in such cases. And like the case of Japanese senryu, there's no counterpart in the other language. So many people can. But if we take in this plan, such those who understand, those who enjoy such kind of senryu cannot enjoy such thing because there's no counterpart in the other language. So as I explained, through such expression, such culture, language is deeply related with such kind of culture, and many people enjoy such culture, and in order to enhance their quality of life. So, and moreover, one of the most moreover, like the case of name and such that due to the differences of languages, such true meaning can be conveyed. But if you take English one, such differences can be all thrown away, and they are thrown away. So such culture will be lost. So in order to prevent these situations, I'm very happy to oppose.
Thank you for the remarks. Next, I'd like to call upon governmental web speaker to show your web speech within 7 minutes.
Big crush we have. The first crush is about whether this cosmopolitan language making process or tarnish each one's culture or not. We believe that we can mitigate this harm in the first place, and we see that there is no harm to make such tarnish. We believe we can make an effort to translate such nuance first. The second crush is about whether we can achieve to unite and enhance the culture or not. We believe that we can enhance such culture strongly, and we can achieve that goal quickly, simply because we can gather a lot of the aspects from each culture, etc. The third is about whether we can achieve the peace and we can solve such conflict or not. We believe that because the language barrier is one of the reasons to make such conflict. That's why we believe we have to take this proposal. Okay, I'd like to refute in terms of those comparisons one by one. As for the first comparison is about, we believe that once we make such kind of cosmopolitan language, this process will tarnish each one of the language culture, simply because we didn't allow the difference of such kind of language. What they believe is that such difference is beautiful to explain their own opinion or mind, etc. But we cannot, first of all, we try to explain again and again that making those kind of process that we translate each one's nuance at the first place. Simple because that we can find that means of happy means shall say or etc. Such kind of mind itself try to make such a detail of the nuance. Okay, there is a lot of the language to explain such as happiness, for example, satisfaction or etc. But we try to say that shall say or etc. can be so mitigated and simple because we can select those kind of nuance. in such cosmopolitan language. And they want to try to explain is about try to show the case of the Nebraska case or etc. But it doesn't. Rather, in our problem is better. Simply because in the case of the Nebraska, at first this change itself is not a gradual one, and second, in the case of the Nebraska, we never each other never respect each one. Simple because but our aim is that gradual one and try to each culture we try to respect and we try to remain very similar of the origin or very similar now nuance at first. So it doesn't make no harm. And what the problem of what the first point is that why they can't explain they are failed to explain why those difference is good. We cannot find the reason. So what? Simple because such kind of diversity itself is remain even in our problem. For example, the case of an American and Australia cases, even we share the same language, English, but each one have different identity, different culture of first place. For example, the hunting or etc. So even in our parliament, we can guarantee each one have the culture at first place. Therefore, their analysis doesn't stand. What the uniquely remain of the harm is that like the case coming from the deputy leader of opposition say watashi, uchi, ore, boku, or K meaning what etc. But we still now we still say in the case model case we at first say that we consider to translate those meaning, which means even in English there is such kind of words even in same pronouns but different meaning. For example, ear and ear, etc. But still we found and we can utilize those English in different way, or we can understand this is different also. That is why their argument is not so important. And moreover, they utilize the case of senju, but still there is an English senju, etc. We can share such kind of speed of culture at first place. Therefore, it doesn't unique harm. Okay, let me talk our clash. The first clash is that we can unite the culture. Of course, then we can gradually try to unite and try to improve the difficulty, including such kind of culture or etc. And we would, of course, everyone have a motivation to, everyone have wanna accepted by other culture or wanna respected by our culture or etc. But our way is, of course, is more better to simply because our aim disclose the barrier of the language. And furthermore, such kind of furthermore, we can achieve the peace to solve such kind of very small level of the conflict. Simple because at first we can gradually we can casually see such kind of news or article in internet and find conflict in Middle Asia or found why such kind of conflict is happening. Even we are not the local people in this place. We can sympathize and we can support material or monetary or etc. in any way. But now we rarely do that. It's totally, we did not do so much. Why? Because there is the language barrier. Okay, because we are lazy, but there is such silent, intangible possibility to integrate. Now, because of the barrier, we negate that such a potential. Why now the world we have the terrorism? Simple because without relying on such kind of strong impact or massive killing of impact, etc., we cannot send a message toward the world because of the existence of such kind of world language barrier. But we believe of the proposal that we can share such kind of opinions easily, simply because we can voice up in the very same similar places. And we can say that the detail or nuance, of course such a detail and nuance have a big meaning for some particular person, for example, the believing God, or believing the origin of this culture, or etc., can share their own spirit of their own culture because of those cosmopolitan language. That's why, at first, we can achieve such kind of peace, and we can prevent the next conflict simply because each one respects you, each one can sympathize what you strongly believe or what you strongly love, such kind of new ones, etc. That's why, comparing with both of the arguments, that we see that such kind of harm itself is totally mitigatable one simply because we right now considering and trying to minimize that point. But our point still remains even though even their counterpart, and that's why we think we have to take this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you for remarks. Next, let's call upon the speaker from opposition to show a speech within 7 minutes.
Two crucial points from big speaker. First, we have to point out that we can't see any legitimacy of taking this proposal. Right? We are saying from the beginning that it's a choice of the people to decide their own languages. For example, I am proud of my name. My name is K. In Japanese, one word can show the sound and meaning. That's why my name K can mean enlightenment, and at the same time, K is very easy to pronounce it for the foreign people. That's why it's international name. We think these two things, like sound and meaning, can be translated in Japanese, but in English we cannot. We think I'm proud of these things. That's why I have the right to choose my own languages. We cannot force people to choose a certain languages. That's a consistent stance from our side for the House. Even if we concede every kind of argument that they make, just like conflict, just like terrorism, just like friction, well, that can be the reason to force people to use a certain languages. We have no reason why from their side of the House. The second point that we have to make is that we, from the beginning, from leader of opposition, concede that it's okay for people to use second languages, especially under the context that they say that English is spreading in the status quo. Why it's necessary, for example, to communicate with other people, to have new language, Mr. Speaker. We think especially in the context that more countries, we have more better education to teach, for example, English as a common tool to express and communicate with each other. There's no reason to abolish, right? Abolish their own languages. There's no need for that. That's the reason we beg to oppose. So, 3 things from which speaker. Firstly, equality and rights of government to ban. Secondly, in terms of the cultural identity of the people, and thirdly, finally, about the friction and conflict. Firstly, about equality and rights for government rights to ban certain things. Firstly, told us that domination words is happening in the status quo, just like English, because there exists impossibility of using English for certain people. Firstly, we think there is decreasing the number of people who cannot use English even if they want, Mr. Speaker. Because there is spreading of better education, better learning methods to learn certain languages, Mr. Speaker. For example, even in Japan, there's increasing number of education, increasing the quality of education to use English. People can learn how to use the English and better. That's why in most of the ESL countries, it's succeeded, right? English and ESL languages, this kind of introduction to the countries, in most of the ESL countries, that are already succeeding in the first place. Therefore, we don't think that kind of problem is severe in the status quo. But secondly, we think if necessary, people can learn by themselves, even in the status quo. People can go to the international school by their choice. People can go to the university and learn English by their own choice. There is no need that we have to force people to do certain things. But thirdly, finally, there are people who do not need to use English in the status quo, right? People, like for example, working like a blue worker in Japan, do not need to use English like even once in their life, Mr. Speaker. Their proposal will force these people to learn new languages. We think it's rather unfair because we think there are people who need that kind of cosmopolitan language, people who do not need that kind of cosmopolitan language. They force everyone to use the new languages. We think rather their proposal is unfair. There is no reason why we have to force it. Rather, we told you from the beginning, there exists a right to enjoy their own languages, just like the case of Nebraska. We ban, after we ban After we began learning in Germany, actually Supreme Court denied the decision, Mr. Speaker. They just gave us Singapore example. Firstly, we had no behind the reason, the reason behind the Singapore cases. Well, it can be justified, there is no explanation about the reasoning. But secondly, we oppose to this case, right? We oppose to erasing the dialects of each country by a deliberate procedure of the government, Mr. Speaker. We basically oppose the Singapore instances, we support the Nebraska instances, because of the fact that there is necessity of each languages, Mr. Speaker, because we think each individual can know the best for themselves, right? Each individual knows the best for their own decision, the best for themselves. Which language is the best, which language can convey your feelings the best. We think each individual is the best actor, the government cannot. Therefore, we think we support the right of the government to ban. The secondary about culture, Mr. Speaker, we think that culture is important, right? There are only two rebuttals from the other side of the house. Firstly, even in case of like New Zealand, Australia, they use English, there are still different culture. We accept that. But we think there are difference of dialect in each country, right? For example, Australian dialect, New Zealand dialect, etc. We think there's like some reason for making new culture in certain instances. But secondly, we think that there are unique culture that comes from the difference of languages, right, Mr. Speaker? Of course, we accept there are different culture, not based on languages. We accept that. But at the same time, we have to acknowledge the fact there are cultures which come from the difference of languages, Mr. Speaker. Like the case of Matsuo Basho, how we can translate into other languages, Mr. Speaker. Especially Japanese do not have, plural or singular, but if we translate it into English, we cannot express, because we have to express singular or plural in English languages. We cannot do the same thing in other languages. That's the fact of the languages, Mr. Speaker, which is uniquely important, right? Because each person should be able to decide their own culture, especially in every kind of instances, Mr. Speaker. So we think their policy is fundamentally problematic. Yes.
Some English speaker can learn other language as a choice, but some minority language speaker have to learn English. This difference is based on birth lottery. Do you think it's fair?
Mr. Speaker, we think firstly, we are very happy to support the people to learn English in the first place, right? If they are suffering from poverty and they cannot learn languages, we are providing free education in the status quo. We think it's fair of letting the status quo. Rather, their proposal is unfair because people will lose the way to learn their own languages. If we compare the degree of unfairness, our policy is more fair than their policy. So let's talk about friction. Their policy suddenly solve the problem friction. We don't think so, right? We cannot solve the problem friction suddenly. Because there's other reason, right? For example, job deprivation from the immigrants. That is one of the main reasons why in European countries we have lots and lots of friction at the end of the day. Or because of the poverty problem or the immigrants that exist, the friction, there is anger of the immigrants existing in the status quo. While language is the only reason of friction, we cannot know and we cannot solve the problem. But secondly, we think that especially in the context that people are suffering, we need unique culture, Mr. Speaker. Because we can feel the feeling of our surroundings, we can feel the feelings of our parents. That's why our stress is suddenly decreased, Mr. Speaker. These are the reasons, these are the function of language that we have to protect. We think our policy will ensure the choice of people. That's why we have to oppose. Thank you.
Thank you for the remarks. Next, I'd like to call upon reply speaker from opposition bench to your speech within 4 minutes.
So what they wanted to accomplish, that is what the unification of this word or the development of this word. However, what they wanted to try is to kill out the difference, so it is because the difference is actually the obstacle of the unification of this power. But as the big speaker said, there is a variety of the cause of the conflict. That difference in language is not the sole obstacle, or only the difference. So what they will do in their paradigm, they will try to kill other differences. They will try to banish the conflict by killing out the differences of the religion or the race, or by changing genes or the changing ideas of the people, or they will try to do to the end of the day they may try to do the ethnic cleansing. That is what they wanted to say. And so we don't think that differences is simply of being the obstacle of the unification. And so difference is more good point for the people. Difference can make the identity, and difference can make the flag be me, as we consistently say in the example of the name and so forth. And so what was the fundamental purpose of the unification itself? It was the development of the world, or the development of this society. But that kind of development cannot be achieved by the brainwashing by one-fourth cosmopolitan language. Because thanks to the diversity of the languages, we can gain the variety of the concept, and we have the different order of the thinking, and what will they care or what they will not care. And there is a variety of the paradigm they will think about the thing in the problem in this world. That is why we can develop this society, and that is why we can gain the development at the end of the day. That is why we can we have to care about the diversity of the language to achieve our common goal, and that is why we feel that our stance is superior to them. That is why we proudly propose. Thank you.
Thank you for the remarks. Last, we're going to follow up on government and the five speakers to show them 5 speeches within 4 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, 2 unfairness we bring you today's debate. First one is, as we already mentioned, that there is unfairness between the language, and second one is the whip speaker from the negative side brings a lot of new analysis from the whip speech, and we think this is also the unfairness in this debate. So I am going to talk about 3 issues in my speech. Firstly, the fairness or the choice in this debate, and secondly, I'm going to talk about the culture, and thirdly, I'm going to talk about conflict. Firstly, the fairness. They mentioned that there is a choice. The people who speak the language or who learn the second language. But we think, we already mentioned in my Prime Minister's speech, we think there's possibly the people have to learn the English or the majority language. Of course, we concede some countries like Japan, people can enjoy such kind of Japanese language, but especially in the context of minority language, people who extremely less people or less people speak the language, such kind of minority language, or the people never spoke in the international field. In these particular cases, in order to be success in the society, they have to learn the English. And such kind of second language speaker has such kind of fact can be the disadvantage of the society. And we think this situation is totally unacceptable. Because simply, firstly, people who cannot speak English because people are poor, because people don't have the environment, such kind of people cannot get the advantage based on the birth lottery. And we think this fairness is totally unacceptable in terms of minimizing the birth lottery. That's why we think, even though their choice, this kind of choice is only for some people who can choose, for example, English speaker, for example, people who satisfy only speak Japanese. We think this kind of principle cannot apply to all targets, the all speaker, especially the vast majority of speaker in the world. That's why we say, in terms of such modifying the fairness, we think the minimizing birth lottery is clear justification, just like the government set up the official language, just like the government tried to modify the dialect in the society. We think the fairness should be minimized. That's why I think we are very proud to propose. So secondly, in terms of the culture, they mentioned that they are proud of that they are proud of the. They first we say that what we say they never listen our model. We don't suddenly deprive such kind of culture, deprive suddenly suddenly their own language or the mother language. We say gradually. For example, in the case of first generation, they just learn as a foreign language, and second generation they just learn the second language, and then the third or fourth generation who born with such kind of cosmopolitan language start to this kind of speak this kind of language, and they can get the identity by themselves. That's why we say in terms of the identity, they can get the identity. And what we say, they just mention that the English or the particular language deprives the such kind of meaning of Japanese language. But we talk about the cosmopolitan language. A lot of linguists gather and get research how the important such kind of nuance each country are. And for example, Japanese linguists can discuss their opinion or claim their opinion, or the English linguists also claim the opinion what this kind of language, what kind of term should be included or involved. That's why I say that such kind of nuance can be mitigated. On the other hand, our case, our culture, our argument about culture is never reverted, never contested by the side of the house, because we can share the culture, we can share the language. It means the people who think will can be accepted by all over the world. People who make a good drama or good movie can accept it all over the world, because language is based on our entertainment. Language is based on our culture. That's why I say the culture will grow. That's why I think in the context of culture, we have to look at the future culture, not the past culture. Of course, we can consider looking past culture, learning from past classic is acceptable, but we have to see the future culture. So lastly, the conflict. We don't talk about the perfectly we can minimize, perfectly disappear the conflict and so on, so forth. We just mitigate culture. Even though the root cause of the conflict is not the language, but we can at least identify the root cause by talking with each other. That's why I think that in terms of context, conflict, at least we can mitigate and we can solve for the part of peace. That's why we are very proud to propose.
Thank you for the remarks. So I close this round. お疲れ様です。